Cinderella from Roald Dahl's Revolting Rhymes. In this video, you will find the author's brief biography. Next, the printed story read by yours truly. After that, a set of comprehension questions for intermediate or advanced level with the answer key, and a bonus in which I share my own analysis. Biography. Roald Dahl. He was born in 1916 in Landhof, Glamorgan, but his parents were Norwegian. On the outbreak of World War II, he enlisted in the Royal Air Force at Nairobi. Unfortunately, while serving in Libya, he was severely wounded. He took up writing in 1942 while he was living in Washington. He wrote many bestsellers, including books for children, some of which have been turned into films, for instance, Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Roald Dahl died in 1990. Cinderella. I guess you think you know this story. You don't. The real one's much more gory. The phony one, the one you know, was cooked up years and years ago and made to sound all soft and sappy just to keep the children happy. Mind you, they got the first bit right, the bit where, in the dead of night, the ugly sisters, jewels and all, departed for the palace ball, while darling little Cinderella was locked up in a slimy cellar where rats who wanted things to eat began to nibble at her feet. She bellowed, "Help!" and "Let me out!" The magic fairy heard her shout. Appearing in a blaze of light, she said, "My dear, are you all right?" "All right!" cried Cindy. "Can't you see I feel as rotten as can be?" She beat her fist against the wall and shouted, "Get me to the ball! There's a disco at the palace. The rest have gone and I am jealous. I want a dress, I want a coach, and earrings, and a diamond brooch, and silver slippers, 2 of those, and lovely nylon pantyhose. Done up like that, I'll guarantee the handsome prince will fall for me." The fairy said, "Hang on a tick." She gave her wand a mighty flick, and quickly, in no time at all, Cindy was at the palace ball. It made the ugly sisters wince to see her dancing with the prince. She held him very tight and pressed herself against his manly chest. The prince himself was turned to pulp. All he could do was gasp and gulp. Then midnight struck. She shouted, "Heck! I've got to run to save my neck." The prince cried, "No! Alas! Alack!" He grabbed her dress to hold her back. As Cindy shouted, "Let me go!" the dress was ripped from head to toe. She ran out in her underwear and lost one slipper on the stair. The prince was on it like a dart. He pressed it to his bounding heart. "The girl this slipper fits," he cried, "tomorrow morn shall be my bride. I'll visit every house in town until I've tracked the maiden down." Then, rather carelessly, I fear, he placed it on a crate of beer. At once, one of the ugly sisters, the one whose face was blotched with blisters, sneaked up and grabbed the dainty shoe and quickly flushed it down the loo. Then, in its place, she calmly put the slipper from her own left foot. Aha, you see, the plot grows thicker, and Cindy's luck starts looking sicker. Next day, the prince went charging down to knock on all the doors in town. In every house the tension grew. Who was the owner of the shoe? The shoe was long and very wide. A normal foot got lost inside. It also smelled a wee bit icky. The owner's feet were hot and sticky. Thousands of eager people came to try it on, but all in vain. Now came the ugly sisters' go. One tried it on. The prince screamed, "No!" But she screamed, "Yes, it fits, whoopee! So now you've got to marry me." The prince went white from ear to ear. He muttered, "Let me out of here." "Oh no, you don't. You made a vow. There's no way you can back out now." "Off with her head!" the prince roared back. They chopped it off with one big whack. This pleased the prince. He smiled and said, "She's prettier without her head." Then up came sister number 2, who yelled, "Now I will try the shoe." "Try this instead," the prince yelled back. He swung his trusty sword and smack! Her head went crashing to the ground. It bounced a bit and rolled around. In the kitchen, peeling spuds, Cinderella heard the thuds of bouncing heads upon the floor and poked her own head round the door. "What's all the racket?" Cindy cried. "Mind your own biz," the prince replied. Poor Cindy's heart was torn to shreds. "My prince," she thought, "he chops off heads. How could I marry anyone who does that sort of thing for fun?" The prince cried, "Who's this dirty slut? Off with her nut! Off with her nut!" Just then, all in a blaze of light, the magic fairy hove in sight. Her magic wand went swish and swish. "Cindy," she cried, "come, make a wish." "Wish anything, and have no doubt that I will make it come about," Cindy answered. "Oh, kind fairy, this time I shall be more weary. No more princes, no more money. I have had my taste of honey. I'm wishing for a decent man. They're hard to find. Do you think you can?" Within a minute, Cinderella was married to a lovely fella, a simple jam maker by trade who sold good homemade marmalade. Their house was filled with smiles and laughter, and they were happy ever after. Questions. 1. Who is the narrator addressing at the beginning of the story? 2. According to the narrator, what was the purpose of making the original story soft and sappy? 3. If you know other versions of Cinderella, is beating her fist against the wall the typical attitude? 4. What about the shoe being flushed down the toilet? Is this what happens in other versions? 5. What was Cinderella's reaction when she realized the prince chopped off heads for fun? Answer key. 1. At the beginning of the story, the narrator addresses me, the reader or listener. 2. The purpose was to keep the children happy. 3. No, it isn't. In other versions, she cries or sighs. 4. No, in other versions, the sisters try forcing their foot into the shoe unsuccessfully. Or, in the Grimm's fairy tales, the eldest cut off her big toe to squeeze the shoe on, and the other sister forced her heel into the shoe until her stockings were drenched with blood. 5. Cinderella was heartbroken and decided she would not endure such violence. She wanted to meet a decent man. Bonus. Even though this is not a fable, there is a moral to this story. Appearances are just that. When we look at a photograph, when we watch a video, or even when we meet a person for the first time, we usually draw conclusions only from appearances. It takes time to get to know people, and it is only their actions that tell us who they really are. Cinderella was a young, inexperienced girl who only wanted to have fun in the luxurious world of the prince. Unfortunately, his nobility lay only in his title, for his actions were vicious. In spite of her disappointment, she was wise enough to notice that noble actions bring bliss to our world.